Record. Hey everyone, I am so excited to have this conversation today. This year, I think we all can admit, has been intense in a lot of different ways. And one of the things that has been really helpful for me is having conversations with my friend Lori, who's here today, because Lori is my astrology friend. And I found that understanding what's going on in the greater universe has given some perspective to a lot of the different events that are unfolding collectively, but also personally, what's shown up for me and some of the intensity and emotions. And when I understand where the planets might be moving, whether it's a full moon or a new moon, or the different themes that are evolving, it's given me something to work with. So Lori and I have been talking, and we thought it might be helpful to share some of this information with people who may not have seen it otherwise, but also add a different layer on top of it, and also talk about different tools and practices on what you can do given all the stuff that's happening, because according to the universe, it is not getting quiet anytime soon. So with that, I think, Lori, I would love for you to explain some of the biggest things that we could keep in mind, particularly this week. I know this week in particular has been quite intense.
Yes, and I'm so happy we're finally doing this. We've talked about it for a while now. So I'm going to talk about three things today. There's a lot going on, and the energy is very intense, and it's going to stay that way probably for the next 10 to 12 weeks, which brings us to the end of the year. And there's going to be a lot more going on and a lot more to share with you. But today I'm going to talk about three things. So first of all, as all of you know, we are in unprecedented times in 2020. And a big energetic influence in that space is the three planets that have been traveling together this year: Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn. And so, as most of you probably know, all the planets do go in retrograde except the sun, the moon, and the earth. So the three planets started traveling together at the beginning of the year, getting closer and closer. So the energy became more intense in what we call conjunctions. And then they went into retrograde. All three of them went into retrograde. So they stayed together in retrograde. And and then they're coming out of retrograde now. And the thing about planets in retrograde, there's a couple of things. Number one, planets in retrograde are closer to the Earth than their normal orbit. So we do feel those energies more from the planets when they're in retrograde. The other thing that I think about when planets go into retrograde is going inside of myself and what comes out or up for you during a retrograde is something that you should pay attention to and, maybe do some work around it. So particularly earlier this week, Saturn, that had been in retrograde, stationed direct Monday, I believe. And Pluto is still in retrograde, but it is going to station direct on October the 4th, I believe. So both of those planets are still pretty close together. So there's some energy there between them. And it's big energy, and those planets want two different things. Saturn wants order, structure, and Pluto wants change. And so Pluto wants transformation. And the way that happens with the Pluto energy is there has to be a crisis, where a crisis occurs, and then things change. And that's what we've been experiencing this year. All these crisis points around all the structures in our society: education, government, political, all the things. So as these two planets are still close together and, have big energies, a lot of people are feeling that energy. And so it feels very heavy. It can be depressive and oppressive. Mm-hmm. So I'm finding, I know I have felt the energy, and talking to a lot of people that I know, they have too. It's really important, especially in these unprecedented times where we are not connected like we normally are. We're starting to kind of come back out of quarantine and being isolated, but there's still a lot of isolation and there's a lot of polarization. That's that Saturn Pluto is polarizing. Everybody's so polarized. It's really an important time for me to stay connected to the people that I care about, the people that I love. Reach out, especially if you know somebody who struggles anyway with, being alone or lonely. It's really important to reach out to those people and make sure that they're doing okay, and they're not, isolated in their own world, in their own head, and having, problems as a result. So I've made it conscious effort to make sure that I stay connected.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the other thing I think you mentioned to me a while ago is that the astrology that's happening now is really rare. So we're in unprecedented times, but the way these planets are aligned and the amount of retrogrades we're having hasn't happened for hundreds of years. Like, this is not everyday occurrences like a full moon happens every month. Can you
Right.
explain that a little bit?
No, you're exactly right. I would have to pull out the statistics, but astrology is about cycles. So, every planet has a cycle, and all of these things are cyclical. Some of them occur more often than others. Like you said, the moon, cycle is 30 days approximately. So we have a new moon and a full moon, like, every 30 days. But the outer planets, that's orbits are slower and longer, cross paths, less often than that. And when three of them come together, it is, less often than that. So yeah, it's cyclical, but it is a cycle that does not occur very often. It'd be hundreds of years.
Okay, so the other aspect that you've mentioned is intensity, and particularly this past week, I know we both talked about this, but like the intensity of anger and fire and Aries and all that. So what does that mean, and when is that going to potentially taper off?
Okay, so we have what's called a square. Mars in Aries is squaring Saturn in Capricorn. And Aries, Mars has been in Aries since June, sometime in June. I'd have to look the exact date up. But Mars is at home in Aries, and that's important because when a planet is in its home sign, it's very comfortable, and it shows, it expresses the characteristics of that planet in that sign more easily. And here's how I think about that. So when you're in your own house, you're comfortable. You wear your, raggedy clothes, you burp or whatever, because you're in your own house and you're comfortable, and you are comfortable being exactly who you are and expressing yourself. You go stay at somebody else's house, you don't sleep till noon. That's disrespectful. And you don't take your ratty clothes and your ratty pajamas, and you're courteous and you mind your manners. And so you express yourself in a different way. And that's how I think of planets in their home signs.
That's a great analogy.
So yeah. So Mars is the god of war. And, so anger, just, tempers flared up. The other thing though, and that's one expression of Mars, also rules fire. Aries is a cardinal sign, and cardinal signs initiate things. So the good thing about Mars and Aries is, it can initiate things. It can get things started, important things, passion, Mars, passion, and, the things that light you up, that set you on fire. That's Mars too. But the way I feel like we're seeing it expressed now is so much anger, so much unrest. California.
Oh, I think we lost you for a minute. Let's see if we can get you back.
So as I said, California is literally on fire. So is Oregon. So we're seeing that Mars energy play out in nature, in people.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have that square to Saturn in Capricorn, which Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. So it's also in its home sign. So there's two signs wanting two different things. And, Capricorn, again, we talked about that structure, government, or maybe we didn't, or you and I talked about it.
Yeah.
It's government, structure, the rules, leadership, can be like the father figure. So that square is bringing up a lot of big energy. It's exact on September 29th to September 30th. But there's some time period before that when the planets are still close enough to each other that energy is activated, and after that period of time. So it'll be, for a couple more weeks that we can see that energy play out.
And so when it goes exact, I think you explained it to me, like the intensity builds, and when they go exact, it takes the pressure off. Does that mean it stops after that?
So yes, so the most intense time when two planets are coming into square, so that would be Mars coming into the square with Saturn, because Mars is the faster moving planet. Okay. Saturn is slower, so it's going to be sit at a spot a little bit longer. So yes, you're exactly right. So that's what we call a closing square. So as the square is forming, let's say a forming square, as the square is forming, the pressure's building, and this square is 25 degrees. So when, Mars was 15 degrees, 16 degrees, 17 degrees, it's building, and it gets to 25. And that is the most, that's the pressure point of the square. And then when Mars goes past 25, 26, 27, it's like the pressure's been let off. The energy's still there, but what you're going to see before it gets to the square is going to be the building of the energy.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And another thing too that you've mentioned to me that I think we'll probably have to dive into in a separate video, but is also understanding where things are in your natal chart, and that's just another layer. I think if you have, I think you said like Mars in a certain house or at a certain degree, that could mean that you're feeling that energy in particular a certain way, or a certain theme is up for you as well.
You're exactly right. And that is a really great point. So we see all this playing out in the world, but it's not playing out the same exact way for everybody, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the part that you bring in that's personal. So if you understand your own natal chart, and so like where is 25 degrees Aries in your natal chart? That's where Mars is, that's where this square is. So that could be a sensitive point in your chart, in your chart. And we'll talk about the full moon, same thing. So if you understand your chart, and I can help you understand your chart.
That's why I love you.
that's what I do natal readings for, is to give people that foundational understanding of their soul's purpose. And, also so that they can see as the planets, stay in motion, you're born, that's the static, thing that never changes. The planets were in that place when you were born, and that's who you are. But they keep moving, and so they keep going through these cycles that we're talking about, and that does, affect people in different ways. Some people, this Mars, maybe, they have a natal Mars in Aries, and it energizes them. It could be very, energetic. Doesn't have to make you mad. But it can be, it can energize you, it can really, get you going. And maybe you're accomplishing so many things during this time because you just have so much energy. So it does, that's a very good point. So things that I'm talking about are just in general, just kind of general, how we might see the energy. Sorry.
Your dog agrees.
He does.
Emphasizing the point.
So sorry, that startled me. But anyway, so yeah, that's a very good point. We're just talking about, general possibilities. Um,
Well, and one thing too, I just want to add is like a side note here. If anybody's listening and you've never had your chart read by an astrologer and all like you read your monthly daily horoscopes anywhere, somewhere online, there's so many different ways and so many different types of astrology too. Sometimes it resonates, sometimes it doesn't. And that can be really frustrating. But when you can understand yourself, I think when I met Lori, what was it? I think 4 years ago now, and you read my chart. I didn't know you, you didn't know me. All I did was give you my birth date, location, and place and time. And some of the things you said to me were just so mind-blowing about myself and who I was, things that I actually didn't even know on a conscious level. But once you said it, I was like, yeah, oh, that's me. Oh, that makes so much sense. And so, as I've talked to you over the years and learning more about it, like when you say something about like, where's 25 degrees in your chart? I still don't really understand that. And that's why I think we should do a separate video on it, because I think it's helpful just so you can look at your own chart and understand how it might be showing up for you. But it's just so validating to know that there is a reason to some extent behind some of the stuff we're seeing and we're experiencing. And so just to take that understanding into how you live your life or the things that you choose, it feels very empowering that we're just not at the mercy of sometimes like the intense chaoticness out there. And so, just to kind of underscore again why we want to do these videos is it's going to look very different for everybody, even though we're all going through the same shared experience. But if we can understand perhaps why some of these things are coming up and some of these tensions, it just puts us in a much better place to do something powerful and proactive about it. And that's the other piece that, we'll have to dive into more later.
yes, and I agree. And you know what? We're all in this together. That's why we are doing these videos. We're all in this together. If we can help each other out, we should. I feel obligated in that regard. So you're exactly right. And yes, that's one thing. That's why I love astrology too, because it really helps you make sense out of experiences, who you are, the purpose of some things happening. Like you said, we're not just, some kind of ping pong balls, bouncing around in the universe with no purpose and, no direction. There's a reason for everything. And astrology helps you understand that and to live your purpose if you want to. I mean, that it's up to you. Everybody has free will.
Yep.
So yes, very good. Very good points.
Okay, so let's get us back on track. So we talked about, sorry, that was my fault, but I just thought it was worth mentioning. So is there anything else we need to know about this Mars and Aries and the square conjunct thing? I can't even remember the specifics of it, but the themes that you were just discussing, because I know you talked about the full moon, and I want to talk about that too, because I think that's a really important other piece for people to understand.
Well, here's the thing. I think that, I don't know about anybody else, but I don't walk around mad and get angry a lot. I really don't.
Anybody wants to. That would be pretty sad.
No, but there are people who, get easily angered more so than others.
Sure, right.
But I have found myself during this time getting angry about things that I would not normally be angry about at all.
Same.
And so that's the thing I think about knowing about this tension, this squaring off, is the potential for that to surface, and just to be aware, because it helps you check yourself. That's what it's helped me do. Like, I stop and say, you usually just don't yell at people in traffic. I mean, why are you worried about, this guy that did this over here? And then I just have to check myself.
Yeah.
And for me, I do breathing exercises when I do that. Just very simple, long, slow breath in through the nose, release. You can even do that driving. So if you're getting mad at drivers, but just to stop and check myself. And the other thing to know, that all this is necessary for change to occur.
Mm-hmm.
And, like it or not, I do think that change is needed. Some of these structures that we have, they need to come down.
Yes.
They're outdated. That's my personal opinion. Nobody has to agree with it, but there's going to have to be crisis first, Pluto, and then Saturn. We're going to have to figure out like what structures are working, what structures are not working. What are the new structures? What's the new world going to look like?
Mm-hmm.
What is the new, government going to look like? What is the new education system going to look like? I think that some of what is, well, a lot of what has happened has been not only necessary, but good. And I hope that when this pandemic is over and some of, all of this smooths out and we get past the election and in the US and other things that are going on, that we hang on to some of these things that we've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
People have learned new ways to connect.
Yep.
I think that's great. People have so much flexibility in their work now, which brings work-life balance. There are companies who never let their people work at home, who now let their people work at home and think, well, this is working really great. We're just going to leave it like that,
Yeah.
So I think some of the things that have happened, even though they've been painful, it's been a painful process, and people have turned to, so much is online. You can do yoga online. You can, people have just found all these creative ways to try to continue to live their life in a meaningful, fulfilled way. And I think a lot of that is really great. And I hope that we continue some of those practices, stay with us.
Yeah.
The restrictions, even when the restrictions, are lifted.
Yeah, I agree. And I want you to talk about the full moon, but I think one of the things that you have helped me remember is that this is a marathon, not a sprint. So, I've heard that the solstice in December is a big, important astrological milestone. And I asked you like, oh, can we all help breathe a sigh of relief then? And unfortunately, your answer was not what I wanted to hear, but I think it's important for us to keep in mind.
Yeah, there's more to come. December, that's going to be a real turning point. And just like with all these other aspects, we know their aspects. We don't know always how they're going to play out. I mean,
right.
Like astrology makes you aware, everybody has been in the astrology world, and all the people that I admire and people that I talk to, we've been saying, oh, 2020 is going to be a big year. Well, nobody really knew it was going to be a pandemic. I mean, there are some markers in there actually that could have indicated a pandemic. And I know one astrologer that is a friend of mine, and he did say, there may be a pandemic. I mean, it's out there in writing. But we don't always know how it's going to play out. We just know, oh, it's going to be tough, or it's going to be, exciting, or, a lot of people have lost their jobs during this time and, have financial hardships. A lot of people started new businesses.
Yeah.
Doing great. So, we don't know exactly how it's going to play out. And that goes back again to your point about your personal chart, your natal planet positions, and how that may turn out for you. Because again, we all have free will.
Totally. And I think we can come back to this point about what we can actually do about it. But you mentioned the full moon. It's a new month. Full moons, always have this associating with intensity, with the brightness of the moon, among other things. So what do we need to know about this particular full moon?
So interestingly enough, this month has 2 full moons, which doesn't happen very often. The first one is October 1st, and the second one is Halloween.
Wonderful.
31st. So yeah, the full moon, and you probably, a lot of you read a lot about the full moon, like it's full, things become full. come to fruition. That's another word you may hear. The full moon is the brightest moon that there is. And so, yes, it can shine a light on things. Things can become, illuminated, if you will. So that's the way I think about the full moon. This particular full moon is in Aries. It's 9 degrees Aries. And the interesting thing about this full moon and how it relates to some other planets in the chart is it's actually conjunct, which means it's sitting right next to Chiron, which is not a planet, but Chiron is the place in your chart where you're wounded. So depending on where Chiron shows up in your chart, the house and the sign, it can show you like where your soul wounds are and where you have, where you've been wounded in life. But the thing about Chiron too is it's not just about the wounds. It's about healing the wounds so that you can help heal others. And that's the important thing to know about Chiron, because if you just sit around with your wounds, I mean, that's really not
fun.
Helping anybody, including yourself. But and that's the other thing, that's astrology can help you understand that. Like, where are you wounded? Where did you come into this life with some kind of wound, something, soul journey that you've been on before. And then once you know that, how can you heal them? And then once you do that, you can be an instrument of healing for other people. So this full moon having Chiron right there may bring some of that stuff up, may bring some of that up for people.
And so we all have Chiron in our charts, because this is a newer element that I learned. And that was a real big revelation for me, understanding where that falls in my chart.
Yes. Everybody has Chiron in their chart, just like everybody has all the planets.
Okay.
And other things we can talk about another time.
Yeah, we're going to have to do a video on that. I have other questions, but I'm going to table that for now. All right.
Yeah, so it may bring that up. So, and of course, we have Mars in Aries, which, in my opinion, in the astrology, it's not close enough. It may activate that Mars in Aries too, but it's not really close. So, I think the astrology world, I've heard, it could activate it, couldn't, it's too far to activate it. But it, so, because I think Aries is going to be like 23 degrees and the full moon's at 9 degrees. So that's pretty far away from each other. But anyway, it could. So, and the other thing that everything's cyclical in astrology, right? And so the other thing that has been true for me is the cycle of the full moon to the new moon. So you'll hear people say, new moon, plant a seed, set an intention, start something, full moon, release, and that's true. But I've also seen, for me personally, that sometimes it's important to go back and look at the new moon in that sign. So we had a new moon in Aries, 4 degrees Aries, on March 24th of this year. So what I like to do, and this is where journaling comes in, important. I'm a journaler. I can't say that I journal long entries every single day. And sometimes it's not in the morning. Sometimes I just jot down thoughts or things that happen. And I have lots of journals. So, but anyway, it's good to go back and look and see if you've experienced some kind of thread between the new moon in Aries and the full moon in Aries. And not necessarily that you started something and finished something, but is there some kind of thread there? For me, I have found that to be true.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. And for me, I'm a wannabe journaler. I'm working on it. I can see the value, but there's something in me that resists it. And, I'm working on it because I do see the value. And I've also had a hard time with this 30-day cycle of new moon, full moon. And, I really believe in aligning ourselves with the cycles and rhythms of nature. And the moons is a really easy way to do that, especially as females too, in the cycles of our bodies, which is a whole other interesting discussion we can have
Right.
later. But I really like what you say about a 6-month cycle and the paired new moon and full moon in that sign. And that can just be a really interesting practice, that maybe it's a new month tomorrow and I'm going to try just to jot down a few things just so I can remember, so that in 6 months from now, when I can look back and just sort of see, what this
Right.
can mean. And that could be something helpful and something new that people could try to start.
The other thing too is Aries, the sign of Aries, being cardinal sign, being first. It is how you show up in the world.
Hmm.
Um, it is how you individuate. It is your survival instinct.
Hmm.
That is, before your ego is formed, you have that energy, that Aries energy. So
Hmm.
the full moon, may bring up some of that energy. How do you show up in the world? Are you happy with it? Or, um, are there things that you want to change about it? So yeah, I think that's another thing good to journal on. Um, I would also say with all of this energy that it's going to be really important this week to stay grounded, and
Mm.
whatever that means for you. I just go out and lay in. It's beautiful weather here where I live, so I just go out and lay in the grass or sit in the grass.
Yes.
I've been, eating, eating my lunch, outside, just sitting on the grass, or just take your shoes off and sit on a blanket and put your feet on the earth.
Yeah.
Um, and just give gratitude um, for everything in your life that is good. And sometimes even the things that challenge you, give gratitude for that too. Um,
Yeah. No, that's a great idea. And just something as simple as getting outside, putting your feet on the ground, grounding into the earth's energy. I mean, there's tons of proven benefits to that, but especially when things feel really chaotic, or even when I'm on a screen for too long, just like using nature, like we are part of nature, counterbalancing that, can really
yeah.
go a long way. And that actually brings up another important point that we wanted to talk about is, the key to navigating all of this energy of 2020 that's going to take us into 2021, as Lori mentioned, is the importance of a daily practice of whatever kind. And you may have started one throughout all of this, you may not have, but I think for me, that's been something I know I've resisted for years, which is having this opportunity and knowing the importance for me of like figuring out what that looked like. And my free time fluctuates every day. So even if it's just a couple minutes or 10 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it looks like, knowing the things that I need to do to feel connected to myself, to the ground, to the earth, to the universe, whatever that looks like for you. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. And that's one of the other things we want to talk about in subsequent videos, is different things that have helped us and different tools that you could try out for yourself to see if it works, if you want to add it into your practices. But just how important it is to create that daily intention of connecting to you, so you can navigate through all the other energy that's definitely going to keep coming our way.
Yeah, I think this year is an important time, and even like Stacey said, if you haven't done it, start tomorrow or start tonight or today or whatever you're looking at this video, and just do one thing, just one simple thing. Just start with, you know, taking your coffee outside and, just being in gratitude, thinking of three things that you're thankful for.
Mm-hmm.
Or, it doesn't have to be an hour long meditation or journaling or, whatever, yoga practice. It can be those things. It can be. But yeah, just whatever works for you. It's really important. And I think the living with intention part is really is key as well. And gratitude is key. And we all know that there's tons of studies about
Yeah.
how gratitude shifts your vibrational energy and how it manifests things into your life. And so there's all of that. But I think too, just right now, when you focus on that, then it kind of crowds everything else out. for me.
Yeah. No, and it's helpful too. And it's helpful to remember that we can always shift into that, especially when things get particularly intense, whether you're feeling the energies, you are reading about what's happening and unfolding, and that we can choose to get caught up in that, or we can choose to come back to where we are, this current reality. And that's where I find like just going outside and connecting to the sun, feeling the sun on my skin, feeling my feet on the grass. That is, part of my daily practice. And also another thing that I found to be really helpful is I like showering at night. And so that's part of I have like two, I have like a morning and a night, like ritual routine. And my shower, or whenever you shower, even if it's in the morning, you can kind of use that as part of your connection. And imagine the water just kind of cleansing your body, cleansing your energy field, helping reconnect you to the earth, and having kind of a clean slate, like shaking off anything that's no longer serving you, or that's not your energy, which is, a whole other topic. But there's really simple things that you can do based on what works for your life, what your life is like, and that it's, we have power and we have the tools. And so that's what we hope we can help just by sharing what has worked for us.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Well, Lori, thank you so much. This was really, really helpful. I'm curious to see what happens next week. I know that there's more around the corner, so stay tuned. Stay tuned for more of that.
Yes, thank you. This was fun. We'll have to do it again.
Yes, we will. We will. More to come. All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you for watching. Take care.